The automobile is one of the most important inventions that revolutionized the modern world. In America, the rich history of car culture runs deep as technology continues to shape the future of the industry. Jason Stein, former publisher of Automotive News, is here to share the stories of people passionate about cars, from industry leaders and innovators to car-obsessed celebrities. Buckle up as Jason takes you inside the boardroom, onto the track, and around the bend on Cars and Culture on SiriusXM Business Radio.
Welcome to SiriusXM's Cars and Culture. I'm Jason Stein in Detroit. Last week was a pivotal moment in the history of one of the oldest automakers on the planet. For the first time in more than 20 years, Ford returned to Formula One racing. But it didn't decide to come back with just anyone. It came back with the team that's on top of the world, Red Bull.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome now the President and CEO of Ford Motor Company, Jim Farley. This is huge news to round out our launch event here in New York. Here he comes, as you can see, in a Red Bull themed E-Ford. I'm going to give you to the floor to share your news. Jim, you're first.
Well, I have to say Ford is going to return to Formula One after more than 20 years. And
the agreement to work side by side with Red Bull starting in 2026 was rolled out as a watershed moment for both teams. Both Ford and Red Bull would learn from each other as F1 changes its powertrain requirements and as the auto industry increasingly goes electric. Future Fords will benefit from the aerodynamic learnings of a Formula One team. Red Bull will benefit from Ford's movement into more advanced powertrains. That was part one of last week. There was an even larger element that also existed. CEO Jim Farley was publicly frustrated when the automaker released its Q4 and full year earnings, both of which were disappointing.
Welcome back, everybody. Ford shares are trading lower this morning. This comes after the automaker's big miss when it comes to earnings. The company says that execution issues plagued operations. The CEO, Jim Farley, was very direct about Ford's issues when he spoke last night to our Phil LeBeau. Phil, what did he have to say?
Becky, there is a level of frustration that we heard from Jim Farley during our exclusive interview. It's clear he realizes that the problems at Ford are substantial.
Farley didn't shy away from the cold, hard truth. Ford needs to get better on quality, recalls, warranty claims, and overall performance. And they can't afford to slip up. Both events underscored an automaker in a massive revolutionary transition. The highs of the F1 Red Bull partnership, the lows of the reality and the work that is very much still ahead for Ford. Today, in an exclusive interview just hours after the Formula One announcement in New York City, we talked to Jim Farley about all of this, the process that went into selecting Red Bull, the immediate learnings that will take place, the reality of the business climate, and the honesty from Farley that where Ford is right now just isn't good enough. Ford's story today on Cars and Culture from a CEO whose grandfather worked for Henry Ford. Jim Farley bleeds Ford blue. Today, he tells us all about it.
Hi, I'm Jim Farley, and this is Cars and Culture with Jason Stein.
But today, the F not only stands for Ford, it stands for Ford in F1. And he is Jim Farley from a F1 simulator at the Classic Car Club in New York City. Jim, what a pleasure to have you on the program.
I'm so excited to talk to you. Actually, this is the first time I've been on your show formally, and to be on this day is even cooler.
It's very cool. Congratulations on the news of the day that Ford is headed back to Formula One for the first time in more than 20 years. I guess we're going to get a Ford versus Ferrari sequel.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. I think there may be a few of those because we're going back to Le Mans as well. So
exactly.
We can check. We can kind of pick our the way we want to do that. But I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point.
Explain a little bit about how this came to be.
I guess as a racer, I don't think you'll meet many people privately that waste as much money on racing as I have. And, I like to kind of pride myself because of that, of being smart about racing, doing it, thoughtfully. We obviously didn't expect the explosion of Formula One in the US, but we were watching it. We watched 26 standards change to a green fuel, which got us pretty interested. And then we were redoing our overall motorsport strategy. and we started looking at Formula One really carefully after Liberty's purchase of it. And how it came together was we kind of made up our mind that we didn't want to own a team, and we didn't even want to do a traditional full engine program, because we just don't think that's the right presence for us. It's super expensive, and we don't have a name awareness problem at Ford. So we were looking for a technology transfer. But going to Formula One, we've learned enough about it that you really need to be at the very front of the pack to get kind of any recognition at all. And so we just put all the pieces together with Kristen and Bill and all my whole leadership team. I went to them to make the choice. It wasn't my choice. And what we liked about it is, hey, we get to learn about aero. The best aero engineers in the world are in these Formula One teams. And we need that for our EVs because the battery is so expensive. Aero is just so important compared to the ICE business. And we have great battery chemistry engineers and research and development, and the same on the software for the battery control. And that's what they need in 26 with this hybrid system where, notionally half the power comes from pure electric. So, we could have a really great technology exchange. And I was looking at, like, if I had to promote my EVs, who should do it? And we were thinking, my team thought, no better than a Max or a Checo or Daniel Ricciardo, because they really know cars. And they really connect with this whole new generation of buyers. And so this was kind of like when Kristen and I and Mark Rushbrook and Bill and leadership team kind of talked to each other was just a matter of months.
So how long had you been working on it?
We've been working on the Formula One kind of strategy, so to speak, for a couple of years.
Okay.
And for the last year, we started to get serious. We talked to pretty much every team. We talked to, all the teams were kind of in play, and all the key players. We talked to all sorts of different people in the paddock, from drivers and past owners. And, we spent a lot of time with Formula One, frankly, to learn about where they were taking the sport. And when we did all of our research, it kind of came back to this kind of practical approach. Hey, let's not buy a whole team. Let's not do, just put a Ford badge on the side of the vehicle. Let's, Red Bull's really far down the road with the 26 engine. Let's be a tech partner for their powertrains, and let's use these drivers to promote our EVs globally.
It's almost like a skunk works operation, though. I mean, the fact
it was
out, right?
Yeah, totally. It was actually, and I think most things that could happen in big car companies are like skunk works, people working in the janitor's closet. That's how we won Le Mans with the GT, and
right.
Most of our cool products kind of come from that. Raptor came from that way. So I'm instantly attracted to any kind of skunk works project.
Did you have a code word for it?
Yeah, Toro.
Appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Project Toro.
What impressed you most about Christian Horner, Max Verstappen, Checo, Daniel?
I think the technical team who evaluated this at Ford were very impressed with this. It's not only well funded, there's no fat. Like, everything they do is to win. So we were very impressed with that winning culture. We liked the bit irreverence of the team. That kind of fits our brand as well. And I think most of all, we really were impressed that they wanted help in certain areas, and they could give us help in certain areas. And there are a lot of Formula One teams that don't think they need any help, or they don't want to give help. I was very impressed with Kristen. He's just he wants to win.
They're all massive competitors, and
Yep.
you only have to look at of course, the Netflix season to see that. How involved was Bill in the decision? I mean,
Very
I know
influential.
he's been at the forefront of wanting to be ahead of environmental issues, and
Yes.
actually talked to me about this on this program. So he was actively involved.
Oh yeah. Yes. Because Bill always, you said it, Bill had this vision for the company and the management team, we're going in that direction, which is great to have that alignment. But Bill also, I mean, he and Etzel, the whole Ford family, are so passionate about racing. Heck, we started the company that way, right? From the proceeds from Henry's race, funded Ford Motor Company. So it's kind of in our blood. It's an indigenous sport for our industry, so I think made sense. I frankly I really valued Bill's perspective because I didn't know kind of the whole history of Jaguar and Formula One program that we owned. And Bill was incredibly helpful in shaping management team's thinking around how do we be practical about this? Like, do we really need to own? and we pretty quickly realized, like, if that's what it meant to go to Formula One, to own the whole team or to do a whole, $100 million plus engine program every year, we were like, no, that doesn't make sense for us. We want a very surgical, technical exchange. And Bill was very helpful.
Have you heard from Sir Jackie Stewart about this decision? Speaking of,
I haven't checked my email today.
I'm sure you will, Jim. An investment in Formula One can require several Brinks trucks worth of resources.
Mm-hmm.
Teams spend hundreds of millions of dollars annually, as you know, and it's chased away some pretty big players in the sport previously. How do you measure the proper ROI on this? How do you evaluate the return?
Well, first of all, this is the best bang for the buck in motorsports. I mean, there are not many Brinks trucks here. We're very practical about this. This is again a very different. This is a totally different approach to Formula One that Ford's taken in the past, or most OEMs take. But of course, it has to have a great return. I mean, for us, getting the right aero on, let's say, the success of the F-150 Lightning is a $500 million decision. So the aero talent we get from from Red Bull to make that kind of decision to complement our existing team is worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. I think the other thing that it is not so small is how much would it cost to have a Max Verstappen say, I really love the Ford Mustang Mach-E?
Now, you're a marketer, you know that.
Yeah, I mean that like, first
can't really define it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, because everyone knows that he knows cars. That's his living. So everyone knows Max, that he's not just going to say that unless he really believes it. He's not a paid spokesperson. And are people going to listen to that more than, if we went to Hollywood and hired a really, famous person? Yes, they will pay more attention because he's an expert. So I as I said, it's the best bang for the buck in motorsports, because the help we're going to get in more profitable EVs and the promotion of the vehicle authentically, by such, respected people like these Formula One pilots. It's actually, in a way, it's kind of priceless.
How quickly could you expect to learn from the experience or take lessons from the racetrack to migrate into Ford vehicles? Does that start? Does the learning start now? Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, they need 26 is right around the corner for these guys in terms of engine technology. So, they want our battery tech now. They want our engine control, our battery control software now, and we want the aero now. So, yeah. I mean, it's we're both quite selfish.
I mean, you have all kinds of things, kinetic energy, capturing.
There you go.
The list is endless, right, Jim?
It's all there. Yep. We're now number 2. We're now the number 2 hybrid maker in the US. People don't know that. We're number 2 in EVs, as you know. So, I mean, there's the crossover is just going to get bigger and bigger.
Formula One has planted its flag squarely in the U.S. market, as you know, Miami, Austin, Las Vegas this year. And the 23 domestic calendar is packed with what was once just an international-only sport. So how does it position Ford in the future?
Well, what we've seen, not just Drive to Survive, although that was a big part of it, but just the overall expansion of Formula One in the U.S. is a very diverse and young audience. Increasingly female. And we can go to NFL and get lots of guys. But if we want to promote our EVs to the modern young American automotive group, I don't think there's a better platform than Formula One. And look at the Austin race. I mean, the Hispanic population in the U.S. is so critical for all of us car companies. And I mean, it's just an amazing venue for all the audiences, but especially that audience. So, what an opportunity for us.
You and I both love races, and we've been to many of them. But I remember being on the streets of Detroit in 1982 or 83, and we were surrounded by non-Americans, Brazilians and Europeans, when the first Detroit Grand Prix took place. So it's just got to be shocking to you how much this has come around in America.
Yeah, I mean, so much of business always is surprising, what really happens. I mean, it wasn't only just a couple of years ago. People are like, well, wow, the pandemic's coming. I mean, the pandemic's here, and what's going to happen to Formula One? Can they put on a race? I mean, look what's happened. So, yeah, it is pretty remarkable. I think Liberty Media buying the sport has really been going to be one of the biggest coups in kind of the sports, the business of sports. And what Chase did and what Stefano's doing. These are great business leaders who really took a sports entertainment platform and really blew it out in the US. And it's almost hard to kind of look to the future on what it's going to become, because you got these great 3 venues. They all have very different personalities. The racing world and the automotive world better than anyone I know. It's kind of hard to predict how this will play out, but I know it's probably going to be a good thing.
So what are the chances we see Jim Farley? And I'm going to get into the racing side of you, but what are the chances that we see Jim Farley driving a Red Bull Ford around Monza or Silverstone or Austin?
Very low. Very low. Yeah. Very low. No, for a variety of reasons. You and I have known each other for a long time. I'll be really straight with you. I've always considered my racing kind of like church and state. Like there's the business of racing on the company, and then there's like Jim Farley's private hobby called racing, and they should never really meet. Even if I could, I wouldn't cross that line. I run the company. I'm responsible for our stakeholders, our shareholders, our employees, the Ford family. I'm not going to cross that line. I think it's confusing to people if I cross that line. My racing is kind of my thing, and I don't want to burden the company with it. And I don't want to cross that line like, I'm somehow playing out my hobby or my, younger self out in the company's, time. I don't think that's right.
Well, you are. So let's talk about your racing. You're into vintage racing. You have multiple cars. I think I'm right on these. You have a Bud Moore Trans Am Mustang, either a 69 or a 70, I think, right? A Lola road racing car, 427 Cobra, an original Ford GT. It's in your blood, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So and that makes the decisions harder actually on motorsports, because I know how hard it is to win, and I also know how many people waste money on racing. And that gets me mad. I don't like wasting money on racing because I have to talk to Leah, my wife, about it when when I make a mistake on the track and I come home early. So it actually makes the decision. I'm more critical, I would say, than most people on our racing investments because of my racing. That seems a little bit ironic, but I'm sure it makes sense in a way. Yeah, I love racing because I love being around automotive people like you. I'm kind of a one-speed person in the sense that, I am completely obsessed with cars, the car industry, not the fashion part of it, but, cars, old cars, new cars, doesn't matter to me. As long as I'm around car people talking about what's next, I'm happy. And the track gives me that. And it's unfiltered. People come up to me and say, hey, my Super Duty did this wrong or that wrong. And, other people at the country club, and they don't hear those things, but I do. And that's super valuable to me. And also, I think about cars at the racetrack. I think about the decisions in the upcoming week and maybe a design review or a software review and or a problem we're having on supply chain. The time at the track really gets me a chance to think. And then the car, when I'm driving, I really don't think of anything else because you can't if you want to be fast and you want to have a good duel with, other drivers. So when I get done, I kind of feel like I've had a 2-week vacation.
Yeah. Well, and you've also said that about racing, I'm more relevant to our designers and our engineers. I'm not some disconnected CEO.
Correct. My biggest fear, I'm kind of a volunteer in this job, and I want to make sure that when I step in the design studio, they're going to tell me the truth. Like I can talk to the clay modeler and say, which I often do, I say, I know they all love this, but do you love it? And what are the other clay modelers? And they're like, we don't like it, Mr. Farley. Don't say yes to that one. And if I wasn't racing, would they say that? Maybe they would, but maybe they're more inclined to tell me the truth because they know I really care about the products, and I'm really passionate about it, and they're like, no, it's not good enough for a Mustang. Yeah. So I think it helps a lot in a lot of softer ways.
Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares believes the same thing. He's a racer.
Totally.
Yeah.
I've seen him at the racetrack in Europe, and he's, by the way, a fantastic driver. Unfortunately, he drives like a T70 with a Chevy motor in it, which I always give him a hard time on.
Have you guys competed against each other?
Oh yeah, many times.
Yeah.
Yep. I've been on the same track with him many times.
Did you win?
I don't want to go there. Yeah, it's a good.
We'll
good
ask
question,
him.
but no. Yeah, you ask him, see what he says, and let me know. I remember being at Spa or Paul Ricard or something, and looking over, and like he and I are in the drivers' meeting, and I took some personal satisfaction of like having two of us, there in the drivers' meeting, and the steward's like, and if you get a red flag, you're never going to race again in this series. Those are it's great to have Carlos. I think it's really special because Mark, I haven't talked to Mark much about his racing, but I know Carlos, and he's fantastic. Carlos races literally every weekend of the year.
Yeah. He
is really, I keep asking him, like, where do you get your funding? How do you do? Because I know he treats it like me, church and state. So he's really savvy. He has better backers than my wife, Leah.
That's great. Let's shift gears if I may. Let's grab second gear on this.
Okay.
On this whole talk. The Farley family has amazing Ford heritage.
Mm-hmm.
It's well known that your grandfather, Emmett Tracy, worked for Ford, employee number 389, as you and I have talked about in the past. He worked on the Model T assembly line. What does Ford mean to you personally?
It means it has meant and will mean the entire prosperity of our family. My grandfather had nothing. He was the simplest, most modest immigrant you could imagine. And all of our college educations came from his job at Ford. Ford, actually, I would just say it this way. I work for the Fords. I don't work for a car company. I work for the Ford family. And the Ford family is not just Bill and his family. It's also my grandfather and all the other people in the company. I guess it's a lifestyle. It's a volunteer job. It's, it's like who I am.
Yeah.
I would say the same thing that most Ford people do. Cut me, it comes out Ford blue.
Yeah. Yeah. You came from a company, Toyota, whose culture was not only studied by business schools as being the exemplary company. Frankly, its culture has been modeled and admired by many. This show is called Cars and Culture. How would you describe the Ford culture?
It's very different than the Toyota culture. And it's changing, by the way, a lot. I would say the historical Ford culture post-World War II was very hierarchical, extremely Midwest, polite. That's a good thing. Incredibly empathetic. Like, this did not happen at the other car company I work. If someone gets sick at Ford, you should see what the employees do around that person. Like, just surround them. If something bad happens in someone's life, like, there is no other. And people say at Ford, like, well, everyone help me. It's Ford. Vertically oriented. That means, like, people define success on their job title or, their vertical achievements. And I think the culture that we're changing into is quite different. It's really what we want to create at Ford is an evolution of that. We don't want to get rid of the values of the company. Like, when the pandemic hit, we had 400 employees drive to North Dakota to help with, ventilators. I mean, we didn't, Jim Hackett didn't say, could you guys head out to North Dakota? They have they want to triple the output. It's like those values. When the Rouge boiler blew up, it doesn't matter. Just, it's the company's kind of wired up value wise to help the community. Like, we have 400 schools in Mexico. We, so many of our dealers really fundamentally impacting their community. So I think the values won't change at the company, but the culture will. And the culture is really about deeper technical experts instead of generalists. It's becoming more about collaboration than whose team you're on. And especially it's about solving problems instead of observing them. So sometimes in a hierarchical company, it becomes like professional accomplishment if you can admire a problem really well, like describe it in a way that other people would be able to see and they don't see it. I call that admiring problem, or doing business with yourself, negotiating, get alignment. We got to get alignment. Well, I don't know if they'll agree. We got to get alignment. That all that stuff has got to go. But we don't have to change our values to do that. But it's going to be a big shift because the competitive field is so brutal right now in a good way that our culture has to change. And that's the hardest part of my job.
Yeah. How closely do you monitor cultural shifts? It sounds like you pay attention to it on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's a good question. We're getting better at measuring, the aspects of culture that we care about. We used to be a company where, 95% of the people got 100% of their bonus. And so now I measure, I mean, it's just one of several things I look at is how many people got 100%. I mean, I don't know about you, but like as a husband, I don't think I've ever had a year of being married where I was just perfectly at 100%. I was like 121%. I was in 72% some years. And
we're going to check in on that answer too, actually. Not with Carlos, though.
Yeah, exactly. So I just don't think that's how business life works. You're either 78% or 72% or 106%, but you're not 100%. No way 90% of the company could be that. So we need to differentiate pay. We need to measure technical expertise. We need to measure if someone is a change agent, like they are solving problems and they lean into action. Their first intuition is to do something, not talk about doing something. And people that, may be really bright and really know what to do and are really valuable to the company, but no one wants to work with them because they don't collaborate. So we are getting better at measuring these things. It's going to dictate your compensation at the company if you manage people, whether you fit the culture. It'll dictate who gets hired, who gets ahead, who gets more responsibility. It won't be seniority necessarily, although that matters. It will be based on meritocracy, on the kind of behaviors that we think are important, like collaboration, excellence, and problem solving.
This is a massive cultural shift for Ford Motor Company.
It is. And it's non-negotiable, because when you look at our industrial system, our purchasing team is now supply chain, manufacturing, and engineering. I would say, we have a huge cultural debt, like a tech debt almost, that like we have to get out of. When I pick up, some of the publications in our industry for the last 2 years, Jim Farley is the CEO that's recalled more vehicles in our industry than anyone for 2 years in a row. You don't fix that by just screaming it at the top of the hill and saying, fix quality. Quality is job one. No, you have to actually change the culture, introducing problem solving, lean way of operating. And I'm extremely thankful for my experience at Toyota, because I saw so many Americans love working in a lean system.
Let's talk about, you just alluded to it. Let's talk about some of the latest headlines. And just this week, you blamed your fourth quarter performance on poor execution. You said, to say I'm frustrated is an understatement. In fact, you said, the year could have been so much more for us. We have deeply entrenched issues in our industrial system that have proven tough to root out. Candidly, the strength of our products and revenue has masked this dysfunctionality for a long time. What were you referring to?
I was referring to our supply chain team that, we bought a lot of chips from brokers, but we should have been trading short-term availability for chips from the chip suppliers by committing to the long-term technology roadmap, sticking with them. We should have, settled on our lump sum agreements with our suppliers when they got hit with inflation and premium freight, and we should have settled them really quickly instead of waiting as long as we did, because it cost us a lot of extra in the end. If you're a supplier and you have a outstanding $1 billion, bill with Ford Motor Company, are you going to give your parts to General Motors? You can give them to Ford or Toyota. If one of them has that kind of deficit, you're going to treat us differently. Our manufacturing systems, when I walk through the plants, it's nothing personal. It's just business. I see some of our plants that are world-class in quality, right up there with Toyota on the way they operate the plant. Other plants, I walk in, I don't know if I'm winning or losing on quality. I talk to an individual operator. They can't tell me if we're winning or losing. I don't know what my gap is to competition on the final assembly in terms of quality. And so we can't have that variance in our manufacturing facilities. And on engineering, I think probably it takes us 25% more engineers to do the same work statement as some of our competitors. I can't afford to be 25% inefficient. And those are controllable by the team leaders at Ford. They're there to make those changes to be competitive. The industry got washed over last year with supply, chip issues and a lot of issues, inflation. It was kind of how we reacted to them is why I said what I said. And I own it. I'm the CEO. I'm not passing the buck. I'm going to talk about it. I could have let John my CFO do all the interviews yesterday. I didn't do that. I'm accountable. That's what I get paid to. And I want my team to know where we stand.
And the Explorer and the Mach-E and the F-150, as you know, have all had launch or defect or recall issues.
Correct.
Still a problem going to be solved?
Actually, yeah. So that's the good part of the story is reporting the numbers is one thing, but what I'm starting to see for the first time in several years now is our initial quality is getting much better. And I told the team, I was like, look, I want you to know from me, if you were given a choice between launching something that wasn't just right and we'll fix it in the field to stopping the launch and not shipping it, stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I give you permission. And I think Alan did the same thing many years ago. We need to relieve the pressure on our team if something isn't engineered right to not release it. And so right now our launches are some of the best quality launches we've had ever, but it is taking longer to the ramp, and that's okay because we're finding problems and fixing them, but we don't want to do that on the back of our customers.
You said this week that Ford left about $2 billion of profit on the table this past year.
Yeah.
That's a sobering number, Jim.
Yeah, because in a normal, ongoing industry, it'd be a huge number, but it's even more important now because that $2 billion would be invested in our growth business.
Right.
So and you and I both know, if you want to invest by $2 billion over the course of 10 years, that's like dozens of new products. That's no bueno. I think we have plenty of cash to fund our growth, by the way, but this is going to hurt the company long term. And that's why this turnaround in the industrial side is so important. Look, everyone in business wants the clean answer. Everyone wants the perfect answer to every question. The reality is these huge transformations of like a Ford, it takes time and you get surprised. There's the one thing I know as a leader is you're going to get surprised. Did I think I'd be the number 2 EV player in the US right now? No. Do I think I would have a better hands-free driving system than the Tesla FSD? No. Do I think that I would have the best-selling EV pickup truck right now? No. I thought Cybertruck could be out. I thought, the GM products would be out. I thought Rivian maybe do better. The fact is our building part has gone faster than I expected. And the other surprise is, ironically, the 120-year-old part of our industrial system has gone a little slower than I expected. And but that's okay, because these are not easy things. But as I tell my team, if not you, who? We have to make these changes. We will be surprised. It's how fast we react, and is really the test for us.
The non-120-year-old company still gets a lot of headlines, and you just mentioned one of its products. What about Tesla still impresses you?
I love their charging network. People still talk about the supercharger network as a really cool thing. I love the fact that they kind of approach the business in the do the opposite of the ICE intuition. I love that instinct they have. I love their growth kind of mantra. And I love the fact that they hold their people accountable for performance. There's a lot I don't like about the company. I don't think they should have released their self-driving software. I think that was a mistake. I don't think their products are going to commoditize like the Model T did. I think we learned a big lesson in the Model T. You can cut your prices all you want, like Henry did, but at some point you cut your prices so much that you become a commodity product, and people don't want to buy a commodity product in automobiles. It is not a commodity product. There's certainly commodity parts of the industry, like commercial or low-end subcompact, but I don't want to be in the commodity part of the industry. But what I really admire about Tesla is their efficiency. They just fight every day to get rid of waste. And boy, would Henry Ford love that.
Yeah, it's true. Page right out of his book. Cutting prices, they slashed their prices on their vehicles by as much as 20%. You also cut prices on the Mach-E, anywhere from $1,000 to $6,000. What was the rationale behind that pricing change?
Well, first of all, I mean, we didn't have to change our price on Lightning and E-Transit because we don't have really a lot of competition. So that's probably the biggest story, is that we picked segments where we kind of were like the first mover. Look, as soon as Tesla changed its price, we saw our order bank change. We had like a year order bank or something like that on Mach-E. Like within days, it had shrunk. We had a lot of cancel orders, and we never designed the first generation of the EVs to be like super profitable. Or now that lithium and nickel have gone up so much in price, especially lithium, definitely not profitable business. We never designed them because we just didn't know about EVs.
It's been almost a year since you announced Ford Blue's focus on combustion engine vehicles and Model E on EVs. That was monumental. 1 year in, how's the transition going?
Better than I thought. Some of the things that the team said, hey, we have to watch out. Those watch outs have come true. Turns out actually Blue's a growth business, but there was some concern. Hey, it's at the old part of Ford. Am I going to be working like it was Cadillac metaphor? I mean, Kodak metaphor. It's like I'm working in the film processing department, or am I going to be working on the new like iPhone competitor? So there was some of that, and that's certainly we've had to spend a lot of time talking to people that hey, Blue is going to grow. We're expanding the capacity for Super Duty and a lot of trucks and Bronco and Maverick. I think what really I'm thankful for, thank God we did it, by the way, not because, to rationalize it, but I've just seen like the growth business go much deeper. So Ford Pro to me is the most exciting thing happening at Ford. Not to pick one, but I think it really is the future of our company because it integrates software, physical experiences, and the digital product and ICE product all together in one business. Pro doesn't make vehicles like Blue and E, but it distributes and service business on top of that. And I think that's where our industry is going. So, boy, is Ted and the Pro team made progress in the last year. Like I've just seen things happen, build out our software. We're now growing 70% a month, a year last year on our software. 50% of our commercial customers who buy an EV from Ford are buying chargers from us and the charging software from us. Our parts business is growing really fast, like John Deere or Caterpillar now, because we have real focus on professional after sales, which is completely different than retail after sales. So it's just that focus. If I ask everyone kind of like from 7 a.m. to 9, please work on the new Super Duty. Then from 9:30 to noon, could you please work on some software for our new electric architecture? And then from 1, you need focus in our industry now.
Well, and amazingly, right? The F-Series pickup generates $42 billion a year in revenue, which I didn't know is larger by that measure than McDonald's, Coke, or Starbucks.
It's incredible. F-Series alone, the revenue in F-Series alone is the second largest revenue consumer product in the world The number one is iPhone. We're behind iPhone. I mean, people have no idea how big the F-Series business is. It is huge.
Final question, and I have to ask this on this momentous day, this Formula One day for Ford, and you'll know why I waited until the end of the interview to ask this. With Cadillac and Andretti teaming up with a proposed F1 team, and with Ford Red Bull, isn't this just another example of a Motown throwdown?
That's good. Yeah, I think the more the merrier. I mean, racing, like most things in life, business, it's all about competition. And I mean, I just think it would be thrilling to have, and how cool is it that we would potentially be doing this sport totally differently, which is exactly how it should be. Every company's different. We're all boxed chocolates. And I think that would be so exciting. I mean, to have, the Chevy and the Ford fans, or the Cadillac and the Ford fans, whatever it is, and the Andretti and the Red Bull fans, both rooting for their teams on the track. I mean, it's Adidas, Nike. you could pick the metaphor. That's what business is all about. How exciting would that be? Yeah.
Congratulations on this exciting day. It is Ford versus Ferrari sequel to come. Jim Farley, thank you so much for being on the program. Thanks for everything you've done here today.
You too, Jason. I love your show, and it was fun, because normally you don't have this much time, and to have such a great back and forth with you, and so happy about everything that's going on with your show. So to be on, it's a real honor for me.
Well, thank you. And I'm so happy with what's going on with your show. You're interviewing Max Verstappen today, correct?
I am. I'm doing my Spotify today. So I'm kind of thinking of all the odd questions. I mean, like, I've never done what you do. It's a lot harder than people imagine to do all the research. And so now I got to get ready to do a good job to bring Max out in the US listening world in a way that maybe people didn't expect.
Well, we interviewed Amelia Hartford before you did, so we'll.
Oh, did you really? She was awesome, by the way.
She was fantastic. Amelia is one of the real greats. But we got her before you did, so you'll have Max before we do. Then, okay?
All right. Okay, I'll try to leave him in better shape then.
That's a deal.
All right, Jason.
Jim Farley, thank you so much.
All the best. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. Thanks again to my guest, Ford CEO Jim Farley. And to see my interview with Jim, go to the Cars and Culture YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to see some 90 interviews. And thanks for listening to Cars and Culture. You can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, as well as on Instagram at Cars and Culture SXM, and on Twitter at Cars and Culture. I'm Jason Stein in Detroit. We'll see you down the road.